Now, from just looking at me, how many of you would have guessed that I was part of this statistic? On February 15, 2011, I was locked up with 15 other co-defendants as part of a mass gang indictment and drug case. I was charged with conspiracy in the first and second degrees and criminal possession of a weapon. I was 17 years old, facing 25 to life. My case was highly publicized on the front page of the New York Daily News. For a long time, my story was written and controlled by someone other than myself. But my story doesn't start or end with jail. My story is a love story. And no, it's not a Prince Charming fairy tale either. It's a self-love journey, a self-discovery memoir. It's a story that I still own and I'm still writing as we speak. I never loved myself. For the majority of my teenage years, I spent time giving the world a love I felt that I didn't deserve. I spent my time looking, searching, and yearning for a love that I was missing. I thought maybe if I loved hard, plant seeds of love in other people, maybe they would love me back. Maybe somebody would notice that behind the tough exterior, know-it-all attitude, and smart mouth, I felt alone. I felt worthless, and I felt ugly. Not just ugly in my soul, and not just ugly in a physical sense, but ugly in my soul. If I could go back, I'd tell myself, baby girl, don't you know that if you plant those seeds internally, you will blossom into this beautiful young woman who won't need to scream to be loved. I wish I knew that before I water someone else, I have to make sure that my cup is full first. Instead, I was overflowing other people's cups with water while my heart was half full. I grew up in a single-parent household with inherited pain and trauma. Chaos was all I knew. Pain was my best friend. But I could carry it all on one shoulder and handle my business each and every morning. My mother, both broken but undefeated, taught me that. By day, she was my superhero. A single mom of four saving the world selflessly. She taught us about politics, global policy, and street smarts. But by night, she was an alcoholic who was selfish, who forgot to cook, who forgot to clean, and forgot to care. It was a lot of pressure at 17. On the surface, I kept it all together though. I helped raise my siblings, worked 2 jobs, and got good grades. As a youth, people had very high expectations of me because of my grades. Everyone had projections and ideas of what I was going to do without asking me what I wanted to do, without asking me what would make you happy. I sometimes felt, do y'all even like me, or do y'all like the potential of who I can become, and how I'll make you look if you contribute to my success? I lived up to everybody's expectations, but my own. And on social media, I was living my best life. I created 2 realities. In one life, my life was perfect. In the other, it was shattered. Because I didn't understand love, I tried to replace it with things, people, clothes. I wanted to be loved, but I also wanted to be accepted by my peers. I wanted to be cool. I wanted to be fly. I wanted to be anybody but me. I thought if I constructed this perfect reality, a happy reality would follow. I was so wrong, and I was so tired. Tired of being the rock, tired of being someone else. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be heard. I wanted to be understood. But most of all, I just wanted to be seen. I equated love with pain at a young age because that's all I knew. So to me, love was like ripping the thorns on a beautiful rose. Despite the pain, it was something I just had to have. Despite my bleeding palms and signs to let go, I held on to my teenage boyfriend so hard that I caught a gun charge for a man I thought I would be with forever. If I could, I would have written thousands of love letters with the blood that dripped from holding on to that rose. Funny thing is, when I got locked up, he didn't even write me one letter. But this story isn't unique. While at Rikers, even though us women had different faces, different races, and different cases, what linked us was that 90% of us were there for someone we loved. We were the ride or dies, the loyal girls who held it down for their men. None of us ever got visits from these men. In fact, the visiting room in women's prison was nowhere near the capacity of the men's. If you've ever visited someone, a man at Rikers, you know that the waiting room would be so packed with women visitors, you'd have to wait a few hours just for a 1 hour visit. But at Rosie's, we were often given extra time due to the low volume of visitors. I was at my lowest in jail. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. You see, it's one thing to go through the criminal justice system dealing with family, lawyers, judges, and DAs, and it's another to go through that with thousands of eyes, judgments, and opinions about me. Not to mention, they never did catch my good side on the front page of the Daily News. I knew I was young and dumb, and that I made a mistake, but the whole world knowing it and seeing it forever made it different. I tried to distance myself from my past as much as possible because I was ashamed. Now, I could write a whole other speech about my 6 months at Rosie's, but I could sum it up in one sentence. I was not built for jail. I already have authority issues and I question everything. Those two combinations in jail do not work. My first night, I got into an argument with the CEO, questioning a bad decision she made. I learned the hard way after a few write-ups and some time in solitary to put up or shut up. The 3 things I'll never forget from jail are: 1, my inmate number, 34909-17055. 2, none of the women got visits from male lovers. And 3, how easy it is to get comfortable in jail. I witnessed how they institutionalize people to make them come back and feel at home, even myself. I knew that I had to go. Luckily, I was blessed to have a strong community support system. See, I didn't grow up with much of anything. We were dirt poor, as in P-O, as in too broke to afford the other 2 letters. But my mother's form of capital was a wealth of education. She always stressed education as liberation. So even in jail, as long as I could go to school, I was free. My church community and lawyer helped me get a second chance. My church bailed me out, and I was given a youthful offender status, and my case was adjudicated. Because of this, I was able to graduate from William Smith College with honors, become a teacher in South Africa as a Fulbright scholar, travel the world and work at a law firm, the Center for Constitutional Rights. And as successful as this may sound, none of those things led me to self-love. In fact, I found myself being in the same place I was at 17, living up to everyone's expectations and pretending I had it all together. You see, a condition of my release was that I had to go to college. Most people don't know that I was on probation up until my 2nd year of college. I felt as if I came home from jail and had to hit the ground running. I never healed. I never evaluated the pain I went through. I was pressured to be perfect and prove everyone wrong. As if it's normal to go from facing 25 to life to choosing your freshman classes. With each milestone I accomplished, I said, I'll be happier when I graduate, or I'll have peace when I get a job. I'll take time for clarity when I travel. And each time I did these things, happiness, peace, and clarity never came. I was confused. I thought I did everything right. I even had a bunch of likes on Facebook. Why was I still so unhappy? Truthfully, I was feeling the same self-love hole, avoiding my healing. And every moment I got a break or had a setback, it all came crashing down on me in the form of anxiety and depression. If you took away all of my accomplishments, my degree, my jobs, and the money, I was left with demons, trauma, and pain. And then guilt would invite itself to my pity party. And I wondered, what did that church see in me? Why was I so special? Why do I deserve a second chance when everyone else is struggling? What does everyone see in me that I can't see in myself? What if they all find out I'm not who I say I am? What if I let everybody down? Am I favored? why me? I've lost hours of sleep on the what ifs. Often people look at me and ask, how do you love yourself? And I laugh in my head because I feel as if I'm still loving myself. Self-love isn't a destination. It isn't just one stop. It's a continuous journey that changes and cycles throughout our lives. One of my favorite authors, Bell Hooks, defines love as the intentional investment in the spiritual growth of a person. So now I want to ask you all some questions. Raise your hand if you told someone you loved them this week. Okay. Raise your hand if you showed someone you loved them this week. Now I want you to think about this. How did you show them you loved them? Now raise your hand if you told yourself you love yourself this week. Raise your hand if you showed yourself you love yourself this week. Think about it. How did you show it? For me, I love myself in the space between the showing and the telling. I love myself in the intent. I love myself in the how. There wasn't just one time or moment where I woke up and said, today I love myself. It was actually through reading where I intentionally began to work on myself. I read this quote, healing begins where the wound was made. And I thought, well, dang, I got so many wounds and the way healthcare is set up in America, I'm gonna be healing forever, and on my own dime, and I got a lot of issues, it's gonna be expensive. But through embracing this philosophy of confronting my wounds, I was able to work on forgiveness. Earlier, I mentioned the relationship with my mother and how strained it was as a teenager. But when I first walked into that courtroom, she was the first face that I saw. I felt so incredibly small sitting in front of that judge. But seeing my mother, I felt that I was level again. I knew that I would be okay. I remember I couldn't make phone calls that first week in jail, and all I wanted to do was hear from my mother. And when I got my first visit, I cried because I was just so happy to see her. You see, jail will teach you who is truly going to be there for you unconditionally. While I was going through all of this, admittedly, I had a selfish approach. I only thought about how going to jail impacted me. I didn't think about how it impacted my friends, my community, my family, my siblings, or my mother. I didn't think how my mother must feel, critiqued, how others may judge her and ask, how didn't you know? What kind of mother is that? So while I'm eternally grateful, I'm also apologetic for the pain that I caused. My story is also my mother's story, because through healing ourselves, we heal an entire generation of lives. For those of us who do healing work or who are currently healing, we know that sometimes the healing hurts more than the pain. In order to heal and continue healing, I had to return to many sources of pain and forgive the people who hurt me. And one of those people I had to forgive was myself. I had to admit that I hurt me, and accept that I hurt me, and forgive myself for hurting me. I also had to accept the fact that I hurt others, even the ones closest to me. I had to apologize for hurting those closest to me, and forgive myself for hurting them too. I have several wounds I've returned to, and some I'm still working on returning to. I return to these wounds through teaching, through sharing my story. Often I hear women say, you know, when I was your age, I went through something very similar. Or I see younger girls look at me in awe because they can't believe everything that I've gone through. And it reminds me that I must continue sharing my story and advocating for youth, for Black women, for the formerly incarcerated. I love myself by switching those questions from why me to why not me. I love myself by standing up to my self-doubts and speaking my truth. I love myself by speaking truth to power. I now understand that I was meant to go to one of the toughest prisons in the country and graduate from one of the top colleges in the country. I've rubbed shoulders with millionaires and broke bread with murderers, laughed with children in rural South Africa, and witnessed lawyers advocate for those who have been left to die. Through all of these experiences, I am reminded that it is my duty to help provide my community with the tools to empower themselves against oppressive systems that exist to break us. It is my duty to love myself, not just for myself, but for those who will follow behind me. When we heal ourselves, we heal generations to follow. When I look at my palms, I still see scars of all who I've loved and gripped just a little too hard, like thorns on a rose. And I smile because these scars are reminders to let go. These scars are reminders that I love hard. They're reminders that I can rip myself, hug myself, and hold myself so hard that love overflows from my own cup. One of my favorite quotes states, "When you share your story, some will fold their pages, others will open the books of their souls." When I first joined Raising My Voice, I remember the first time I shared my story, I was literally whole body shaking. But I wasn't nervous, I wasn't necessarily scared, something just didn't feel right. Linda Steele, our program director, said, "That's the truth. Your truth is so powerful, it's shaking out of your body." Each week, as my classmates shared their stories, my first instinct, it was to fold. But as they were vulnerable, honest, and unafraid, I wanted to open my pages, open my book, and share too. Thank you for sharing your stories and giving me the courage to share mine. And I hope that after hearing my story, the pages of untold stories inside of you unfolds, unleash, and unearth your core so that the truth shakes outside of you too. Thank you.